Good morning, church.
Good morning.
Welcome to those of you worshiping online as well. We're so glad that you've set aside this time for your God and for this faith community. It's good to be together in the name of Jesus. Amen? Amen. A couple things, friends, before we begin in worship this morning. I want to, first of all, acknowledge the beautiful flowers up here. Those were given this week by Connie Chamberlain in memory of her husband, Larry. Larry did a lot for this church, for this faith family. And so we continue to thank God for his life. And Connie, we thank you for the gift of flowers. We've been blessed with refreshing rain. Amen?
Amen.
We've been blessed in so many ways. And our opportunity as children of God, as people of faith, is to give it back to our God. And it starts right here. I would encourage you to center yourself in the knowledge that the Spirit of Christ is indeed in this place, and let us offer our gift of worship to our God. Would you stand as you are able in body or spirit? Let us worship together, and let us welcome the light of Christ.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath you could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love with those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is none like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
seated, church.
Good morning. How is everybody? Good. Well, Justin called me earlier this week and said, "Well, we're gonna showcase talent." So the first thing, I kid you not, the first thing that popped into my head was Joe Henderson. So as Joe's coming up here, I want to thank him for his willingness to bless us with his gift. I got the opportunity to rehearse with Joe, which really just meant good conversation and making some music on Friday morning. So that's been a really meaningful time for me. So.
There we go. Joe, that was a beautiful prayer. Yeah, there's a difference, isn't there? When someone's pointing to God with their gift, them pointing to themselves. Joe helped us see God. In a continued spirit of prayer, I'd like to lift up the new names on our prayer concerns list. First, we know that Mike Pack, a friend of our church, passed away on October 7th, and so we are grateful for his life, and we hold his memory and his family in our hearts. We add Palmera Bolin, Joyce Brock, who has experienced just so many losses. Recently, her mother and her was going to be brother-in-law died last week, and then about a year ago, her fiancé, Roger Huber, Sherry and John McFarlane, Janelle Sills, and Cindy Vaught. Will you pray with me, church? God of love, we are so grateful for this time, this beautiful fall morning, where we come together to be united. We offer you our hearts in this time of worship, to be comforted and strengthened in your presence. We hear rumors of violence, persecution, and oppression. God, restore your vision to our eyes, that we would see how to walk the path of peace and justice and love. May this time together imprint this vision on our hearts, that we would live into your beloved community. Help us to find hope in your promise of a new heaven and a new earth. For it is in your grace that we can reach across the differences that divide us and greet one another in a spirit of reconciliation and peace. Help each of us to use the gifts you have given for your glory. When we sing for you. When we serve for you. When we give to you. All of this for the common good. Show us how to use our lives for the healing of creation, how to use our arms for the embrace of the wounded and unwanted, how to use our ears to hear the cries of all who suffer, to use our voices to speak up for those who have not been heard, and our hearts to support the pulse of new life that even now takes root within each of us. Forgive us when we fall back in a spirit of fear, and help us to take hold of the courage and strength to live for love. We ask these things in the name of your Son, Jesus, who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Who am I that the Lord of all the earth would care to know my name, would care to feel my hurt? Who am I that the bright and morning star would choose to light the way for my every wandering heart? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, vapor in the wind, still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. I am yours. Who am I that the eyes that see my sin would look on me with love and watch me rise again? Who am I that the voice that calmed the sea would call out through the rain and calm the storm in me? not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. I am yours. I am yours.
We're on here. Oh, there we are. Good morning, church. This is a spoken word that I offered back when we were worshiping outside. And so I invite you to close your eyes on this rainy morning. Breathe in deeply and think about nature. When a butterfly spreads its wings, I wonder if the caterpillar inside is surprised. Because I know that even I can surmise from my own past experience that in moments of minuscule movement away from my own mental masquerades and towards meaningful movements of the spirit, well, sometimes I am secretly surprised. Surprised by the way God has multiplied loaves, filled, fed, and freed people who have been fervently faithful, as well as those who have failed furiously. See, the God of the cosmos started with particles, not planets. The God of creation started with soil, not souls. The God of love started with the hearts of imperfectly perfect people. And it is perhaps not so surprising that the divine who dwells in all things has increased all things, and even given the caterpillar its wings. And if it is not so surprising for us to say that the caterpillar somehow transformed to display the beauty of creation in the world, not just on Sundays, but every day, then perhaps we can believe in the faithfulness of a God who makes a way using the small things, holding all of creation in a cocoon until the moment of revelation that bursts forth like a beautiful butterfly, unfurling its wings, giving glory to the creative process that engages God's standing invitation to co-creation.
One of my favorite things, I'm looking at my church camp friend right here. One of my favorite things about church camp that we often do is the talent shows, right? Now, I'll confess that sometimes aspects of it are pretty awful, but usually intentionally so. We went to family camp a couple of months ago, and one of the acts was this fellow wanted to show us how many cheese puffs he could eat in 60 seconds. You know, these are the kind of things you get. It was actually a special moment for our family because my little 3-year-old daughter got up and gave her first public performance at the talent show at church camp. She got up and said, "Why did the banana go to the doctor?" And everybody said, "Why?" And she said, "Because he wasn't peeling well." We were pretty proud of that. The reason that I really love these events, though, candidly, is because there is always a talent that emerges in one of these that you had no idea was there, right? And years ago, I was counseling at church camp, and there was a young woman at the camp that year. I think she was a sophomore or junior in high school. And she was one of the kids in the camp who was different. You know, there's going to be kids in every camp. There's people in every community who are just a little different than everybody else. And she was very quiet. She was that kid who would kind of, you know, she would wear her hair down in front of her face all the time because she didn't want people to see her, and she could kind of hide. And I don't think I heard her say 2 words the entire week. And then I saw that she had signed up for the talent show. And I saw that and I thought, oh my goodness, you know, please God, let this be okay. I wanted it to go well for her. And so her time came and she stood up, and, you know, my heart was beating about a mile a minute. And she stood up, and for the first time that week, she pulled her hair back away from her face, and she opened her mouth to sing. We all took a deep breath, and from her mouth proceeded Broadway-level operatic song. And I looked around the room. I'm feeling it again right now. You can probably I looked around the room, and everyone, including all these high school students, was weeping. And I think we all walked away that day feeling like we knew her and like we knew our God a little bit better. Amen? Friends, we're talking today about talent. There's a real sense in which Amy has given away. She's already kind of preached the sermon. I think the sermon's been preached in many ways up here already today. We are continuing our stewardship emphasis season, talking about time, talent, and treasure, the ways that God calls us to put those things to work, the gifts of time, talent, treasure that God has given us, to put those things to work, to serve God, to bless others, and to build a better world in the image and in the name of Jesus Christ. So today we're talking about talent. And to help us do that, I want to look at a passage of Scripture that may be familiar to you, a famous passage from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 12. We're going to reflect on this together and then talk about 7 questions. We're going to let that passage of Scripture shine light on 7 questions about talent. Okay, so let's look at this together now. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, I'll read verses 4 through 13. You can follow along in your pew Bible. We'll put the words up on the screen as well if you'd like to follow along in that way. All right, chapter 12, verse 4. Now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit. To another gifts of healing by the one Spirit. To another the working of miracles. To another prophecy, to another the discernment of spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots to each one individually just as the Spirit chooses. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. This is the word of God for the people of God, and together we say, thanks be to God. All right, 7 questions of talent. Number 1, what is talent? What is it? We probably all have a felt sense of this, but if you've read Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30, you might have seen talent referred to in a slightly different way and kind of wondered what the difference was, where that came from. So the word talent comes from the Greek talenton, all right? And actually, it wasn't originally used the way that we tend to think of talent. It was money, right? More specifically, it was a weight They didn't have in the first century, denominations of money the way we do, pennies, nickels, quarters. They had gold, they had silver, they had copper, and they would weigh each of those to determine how to exchange those things for goods. So 1 talent represented a certain weight of each of those different precious metals. All right? So how did we get from there to using talent the way we think about it? I learned something this week. It's always a good thing, right? That wasn't, the word talent wasn't used the way that we tend to think about it until 1430, the year 1430. A scholar first proposed that maybe that text, that passage from Matthew chapter 25, wasn't just about money, but that it was meant to be read, to be understood metaphorically, right? Everything God gives us, we are meant to put to work in the service of God and the building of God's kingdom upon this earth, right? So we began to use talent then in that metaphorical sense. Basically, the gifts that God gives us. That's what we're talking about here. Gifts. We could have called the series Time, Gifts, Treasure. But come on. Yeah, the acronym works so much better with talent. So even though gifts are referred to here in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, know that when we talk about talents, that's really what we're talking about. Special aptitudes that are innate in you. All right, question 2. Where do they come from? Look back at the passage here. Verse 4. Now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. It is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. Same thing down in verse 11. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit who allots to each one individually just as the Spirit chooses. Gifts, talents are given by God, by the Spirit of God moving in us, moving through us. All right? It's also, I think, worth noting that that's the only place that real talent comes from. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7 says, "What do you have that you didn't receive?" Okay? Everything we've got, all the talents we got, we like to get proud about them, don't we? Oh, I'm pretty good at such and such. Yeah, well, that's wonderful because God gave you that gift. So maybe we ought to be celebrating God more than we celebrate ourselves. All right, gifts don't come from anywhere but God. James 1:17, every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. All right, question 3. We're making progress here. To whom? To whom are they given? Look at verse 7 there. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To each, everyone who will receive gifts of the Spirit. Sorry, not sorry, that means you. People want to say, "Oh, I'm not talented. I'm not gifted." You going to argue with Paul? To each, including you. Number 4, for what purpose? For what purpose are these gifts given? Look again there at verse 7. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for what? For the common good. You mean I wasn't given my talent primarily to help me make money for myself? To make my life more enjoyable, to make myself more effective so that I could be lifted up? No, for the common good. This is important, right? Gifts, talents are not for the purpose of building ourselves up. They are for the good of all in the context of the emerging kingdom, okay? Ultimately, they're for glorifying God. Is what these gifts are for. What did you say, Pastor Amy? You said it so perfectly before you said, isn't it different when we're using our talents to point to God and not to ourselves. I'm not sure the guy eating the cheese puffs was trying to point to God so much. I believe that young woman with that beautiful voice was. And that made it worship. It made it worship. These things are for God's glory. And by the way, saying it's for the common good and for the glory of God, those things are not different. Does that make sense? A gift is for the common good because kingdom is meant to emerge in all of us and through all of us. And even as the one kingdom emerges in and through all people, God is glorified. All right, number 5. What if I don't know what they are? Or the question I get more often is, what if I don't have any? Well, no. We talked about that already, okay? You do, verse 7. But what if you don't know what they are? How do you find out what they are? And here, the text is a little more subtle because I don't think the text actually provides any guidance on how to find them. Did you notice that? I think the assumption is you kind of know what they are. You kind of know, don't you? Think about it this way. When in your life have you felt most impactful? You know, when have you felt like you were making the greatest difference for others? Right? That was probably a time when you were using the gifts, the talents that God gave you. It's not so much about times when we felt alive and whole and purposeful because the world was giving to us. When you feel most alive, when you feel most whole, when you feel most purposeful, that is probably a time when God is working through you most powerfully, when you are putting to work the gifts, the talents that God has given you, because those are moments when you are acting as God has called you to act, when you are living as God has called you to live, when the Spirit is moving through you. I would encourage you to reflect on those times in your life when you feel like you've made the greatest impact, because again, those probably were times when the Spirit was most active through you. If you still don't know, spend time praying about it. It's always a good answer. Pastor Amy started some new groups, prayer practice groups. Check out the newsletter that went out this week. You can come and be part of those if you need more time with fellow Christian servants in prayer. And I guarantee you that if you go to God in prayer consistently and ask God to reveal those gifts and talents in you, God will do exactly that. All right. Question 6. How do I put these talents to work? 3 major steps here, all right? 1, it's the one I just named. Pray. Pray on the needs of this community and this world. This is how we discover purpose, okay? We reflect, we discern on the needs of our fellow humans in this community and in this world. And we draw connections between those needs and the talents, the gifts that God has given us. When you are putting your talents to work to address important kingdom needs in this world, you are living with purpose. So spend time focused not just on yourself, but on the needs of our community. And I think that will help you understand better how you can put to work the talents that God has given you. So that prayer is number 1. Number 2, it sounds like a funny way of answering the question, how do I put these to work? But I think it's true and helpful. Just put them to work. Just start. Right, Kathy? Just do something. Use them. Okay? You can spend the rest of your life thinking about how you use that talent, or you can just go out and do something to make a difference for people. And I suspect also, just as God will reveal God's self to you in prayer, God will reveal God's self to you also through servant practice. You go out, you try, you put it to work, you learn. oh, actually, maybe my talent would work a little bit better this way. And then you adapt, and you go out, and you try again. You continue to serve. Put those gifts and talents to work. Third, I got to say this first on that point, okay? Scripture is very consistent about the importance of just putting yourself out there and trying. Chapter 12, verse 31, from this very chapter, right? Strive to put your gifts to work. 1 Timothy 4:14, do not neglect the gift that is in you. 2 Timothy 1:6, rekindle. If you feel like you've kind of fallen out of the habit of using those gifts, rekindle that flame in you, right? Rekindle the gift of God that is within you. Fan it into flame. And then third, and perhaps most importantly, that's what Pastor Amy said, as you use your talent, center yourself in Christ. It's one thing to make a meal. It's one thing to mow a yard, okay? It's a different thing altogether to do those things for Jesus, to center yourself in Christ. Make it an act of worship. The French monk, Brother Lawrence, talks about this. He lived in this monastery, I think 16th century France. And the brothers there at the monastery discovered that he had a gift for washing dishes. He was just really good at washing dishes. He could wash them more effectively than anybody else in the monastery. So they put him in charge of washing dishes. He could have received that begrudgingly, but he didn't. He said, I made it an act of worship. I would take a dirty cup, made dirty because one of my brothers had drank out of it at breakfast that morning. And he would take the cup, and he would put the soap in it and take the water, and he would wash the cup. And he would say, thank you, God, for the gift of this cup that allows us to drink water that helps us to stay alive. Thank you, God, for my brother who drank from this cup this very morning. Bless him today. Bless his work. Thank you, God, for giving me hands that I can use to wash a cup, to move and act and be present in this world. How different is that? Not just washing dishes, friends. Worship. Worship. As you use your talent, however you do that, I would encourage you, whether you're teaching a child or, again, mowing the yard or making coffee in here for others to drink, make it an act of worship. Do it in and through and for Christ, and it will transform the experience. Put your talent to work in Christ. Seventh, final question. This is one that, we struggle with this, y'all. What if my talent isn't good enough? How many times have you said, be honest now, have you said in your life, well, I can do this, but so-and-so can do it so much better? Right? I shouldn't sing out in worship because Josh sounds a lot better than I do. Let's just listen to Josh. That may be true. But Josh isn't up there. Josh could sing like that at home. Maybe he does. Josh is here to lead you in worshiping. And we are called to make a joyful noise to our God together. Sing out. It's an act of worship. Look at chapter 12, verses 4 through 6 again. Varieties of gifts. And it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. Same thing down in 11. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit who allots to each one individually just as the Spirit chooses. You're right. Somebody may have been given a little bit more of a certain talent than you. Does that mean you're not supposed to use it? No. God has allotted you gifts. It doesn't matter how much of that gift you're given, you're called to use it. That's the point of the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, right? One got the 5, one got the 2. They invested, they doubled. One was afraid of losing the one and put it away, hid it. This is the point. However much of the gift you've been given, you are called to put it to work. And this is the important thing. You never know. If you put it to work, you never know just what the Spirit can do with that gift activated. This isn't physical stuff, y'all. We're talking spirit stuff. This is spirit stuff. And when the Spirit is involved, you never know what God might do with the gifts that you use, that you put out into the world. Verse 22. Skipping down ahead a little bit of the passage that we read. Verse 22 says, the members of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. If we have a 1,000-pound block to tow, and you can pull 800 pounds, and I can only pull 200 pounds, skinny little Justin, he can only pull 200 pounds. Guess what? You still can't pull it without me. And I can't pull it without you. It takes all of us working together, putting the gifts that God has given us together to work, that kingdom might come. We've been putting some talents to work today up here. Joe, that was a prayer. Thank you for offering us that prayer time. Friends, this is Becky True up here. And I'm sure you noticed that Becky has been at work up here throughout this service, using a talent that God has given her. Becky, tell us what you're up to up here.
Well, I'm making items that I need to have done for a show in a couple weeks. So I've made a big platter and some bowls and some Texas license plate
cool.
Stuff.
Okay, you're working with, what is this? Is this clay?
Yeah, this is just red clay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Becky, tell us why this art form is an act of worship for you.
Okay. Ever since I was little, I've loved creating. I've loved nature and creating. And so, thanks be to God, He gave me a talent that involves both of them. And I love the fact that this comes from nature. When I'm out there in my pottery studio, I have a old grubby note card that's up on my bulletin board, and it says, Lord, I create this pottery in your name and to your glory. Thank you for your creative and inspiring energy working through me. And I try and think of that most days. And the other thing is I'm thankful, as I've gotten older, my husband and I retired from teaching, and we needed extra money and something productive to do. And both of us love working with our hands, and we ran across this verse, and we made it ours. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, and to work with your hands, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, and you will not be dependent on anybody. And that's out of 1 Thessalonians. So we're really grateful to have talents that use our hands, and it's just really a blessing to have that.
Amen. Thank you so much, Becky. I want to just call your attention to a couple other things that are up here as well. We have a couple of prayer shawls that I believe were made by Connie Chamberlain. Beautiful. People can be wrapped in these and know that they're wrapped in the loving embrace of God. We have a quilt made by our prayer shawl ministry. I don't know exactly who made it. That's one of the neat things about that group. They don't want credit. They make these. They give them to the ministry, and then these are given to bless a person who's going through a challenging time. This little layette, this is, Carol Wright made this. How precious is this? A little baby layette, hat, booties, blanket, a little snuggly bunny rabbit. These over here Mac McFarland called me when we announced that we were doing a drive to get hats and other warm things into the hands of our friends at Roost Place, Oak Trail Shores. Mac called me and said, my sister, who lives in LaVale, Maryland, Doris Stotler, loves to make hats and wondered if she could send some to bless those kids and families out there. Just a reminder that church goes way beyond the walls of one building in any one place. We're so grateful to Doris for that gift. Brenda Jeter, some of us know her, made this to share with us. And I think it's beautiful. I'm pretty proud of it, and I'm pretty proud of her. And she said, the dragonfly universally represents transformation of a person. And in my wall hanging, the sun radiates out like the eye of God. We are all becoming what God hopes for us. We'd be remiss, I think, also if we didn't acknowledge Linda Keithley's hangings, which bless us and beautify this space every week. And finally, right up here is a beautiful little painting that was made by our very own Carol Farrell. And I'll close with her words. Just an empty beach chair, reminding me of a place where we spent countless hours talking about God's marvelous deeds and all we had to be thankful for. Just an empty chair. At first, it was too painful to continue to paint, when in one of those God moments, I realized that the chair was not empty, but rather full to overflowing with love and comfort God had placed there by more people than I can ever count. Not an empty chair at all, a chair of blessing. Church, use what you've got and do what you can to the glory of God. Amen.
This fall weather has me thinking about one of my favorite holidays, which is coming up, Thanksgiving. I know it's not the next one, that's Halloween, but I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving. You know, growing up, Thanksgiving was a big holiday in our house. My mom would invite, I think we had 30 people in our house one year, and everybody would end up bringing something. You know, my mom would spend days cooking beforehand. We had family members who were ready to watch the kids that day, some family members who were ready to watch football that day. But everybody came together and brought their gifts, whether that was sweet potato casserole or mashed potatoes or whoever was bringing the turkey, whoever was bringing the ham. Everybody brought their gifts together so that we could spend a day enjoying one another. And as I grew older and we moved away from home, Jordan and I got married, we moved to Texas, and now this big Thanksgiving thing wasn't happening anymore. But we decided that we still wanted to do some kind of Thanksgiving, so we texted our friends. We had Friendsgiving. And it happened a little bit differently because we didn't have all of the recipes in our back pocket that we had grown up with, right? And so in the group text, we figure out who can bring what. Well, I can get the recipe from my mom for her cookies. Oh, I know how to make cider. Can you bring the turkey this time? And maybe you can bring the potatoes. And we figured it out. A bunch of college kids, away from home, missing family, but coming together, knowing that there's some things that we're good at and some things that we're not, and putting that all into the pool and making it work. We come to this table and we bring a lot. We bring a lot of our gifts and they come together here. And I think that it wasn't a mistake when Jesus sat down with his disciples at a meal and said, "Remember me. Put me back together." And Jesus knew his disciples. He'd spent some time with them. He knew what they were good at, maybe what they weren't so good at. And he knew that this table, that this meal, whether it was like when they sat down that day or whether it was going to be what it was like years later down the road when they just had to figure it out, he knew that it would bring them together, that it would bring their gifts together for the glory of God. On the night that he was betrayed, Jesus took a common loaf of bread. He broke it and gave thanks, saying, "This is my body. It is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way, after this supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is a new covenant in my blood." It's something new we're doing. Every time you drink it, remember me. For every time you eat this bread and every time you drink this cup, you proclaim me anew in the world. This morning, our very own Amy Dwight made our bread. Amy put Jesus together for us this morning. And we have the opportunity to come to the table today, to bring our gifts, and to think about the ways we might put Jesus together for somebody else. And that's how we are together as community. Hear the prayer of our elder.
Pray with me. Lord and Father, we are so proud to be here today. We are so amazed to be in your presence and be surrounded by your warm love. We particularly pray today to make our lives more purposeful through the time, talent, and funds. And we want to also pray particularly for our police officers whose lives have become more and more difficult over the years. We pray for everyone in this church, and we come to your table to take your bread and your wine and relate those to our own bodies and to the physical and spiritual improvements that are made through those. In God's name we pray. Amen.
May we come to the table knowing that here we are energized to bring Jesus into the world using our gifts and talents. Come.
God of salvation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of light. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars were made to worship so alive, I can see your heart in everything you've made. Every burning star, a signal fire of grace. Creation sings your praises so alive. God of your promise, you don't speak in vain. No syllable empty your void. For once you have spoken, all nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars were made to worship so alive, I can see your heart in everything you've made. every girl of the signal fire of grace. If creation sings your praises so alive, God of salvation, you chased down my heart through all of my failure and pride. On a hill you created, a light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. Where you lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you so alive, I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. If you gladly chose surrender so alive, I can see your heart 8 billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them so alive, like you would again 100 billion times. But what measure could amount to your desire? You're the one who never leaves the one behind. You're the one who never leaves the one behind.
Church, I am going to try and keep this short. There are a lot of new opportunities this week to grow more deeply in your faith and to prayerfully consider how you might offer your life, your talents to God. So tomorrow, I will be out at the retreat house in Pecan Plantation at 10 a.m. I'll meet here at about 9:30 if you need a ride. Let me know if you can today, text, email, whatever. So I can take the church bus if needed, or just my car. If you live in Pecan, then we'll just meet there. But that is a contemplative time in a beautiful setting. Whitney Pakanowski and I are leading a discussion about Teresa of Lisieux's Little Way, the little ways that we can love God. Then Tuesday, we'll have a healing group in the parlor at 2 p.m. That is sort of a combination of Brene Brown's work. She is a psychologist, therapist from Houston, and Father Rohr's work on emotional sobriety. And I'm kind of marrying those two together for a conversation about emotional healing. So that's 2 o'clock. Everybody's welcome. Wednesday is Life Together at 5. So that is just a fun fellowship time for those of you who have never been. Bring a side dish to share and get ready for some fun. We're going to have a monthly gathering like this where we share life and food. Anything else about that on Wednesday?
Or bring a main dish. It's a true
Yeah,
potluck.
true potluck this time. Yes. Sometimes we've provided the meat. We're not doing that this week, so it's a true potluck. Bring a casserole. Okay, and then Thursday at 10 a.m., a parenting group for anyone interested in some support and fellowship with other parents of young children. And then Sunday evenings, we're doing a Doubters Dinner. This is the segue. We had our first one at the Pakanowski's house last Sunday. And after going around the room with about 10 people, I realized I was the only one who didn't have church wounds from my childhood. That is, I was the only one who was not terrified of going to hell before the age of 12. And I didn't realize how fortunate I was to grow up with a faith that was beautiful and nurturing, safe and encouraging, loving. So if you know of people in need of a safe place to explore that, let me know. This is a beautiful gift we've been given. This beautiful church, lots of ways to serve, and we all have gifts. So the invitation is to find the way you can do that, just between you and God. It may truly be, as Justin said, washing cups. It may be showing up when no one else is here, just to help behind the scenes, if you're a shy person. It may be offering music and worship, or coming up here and working with your hands to glorify God. We all have a way. So we would love to go deeper with you in whatever ways we can to help you discern God's will for you and how to use your gifts. We asked the question that Jesus asked Peter, "Who do you say that I am?" And he responded, "You are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God." This is the invitation to all of us. How do we live into the living God's hope for all of us and live for the common good? So if this is something you want to explore with us, would you please come forward in a formal way if you want to join the church or if you need prayer. We would love to have you as we sing our final song. What is it? Less like me. All right. Please stand.
Oh, I have days I lose the fight, try my best but just don't get it right. Where I talk a talk that I don't walk, miss some moments right before my eyes. Somebody with a hurt that I could have helped, somebody with a hand that I could have held, and I just can't see past myself. Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. There's no denying I have changed. I've been saved from who I used to be. Even at my best, I must confess, I still need help to see the way you see. Somebody with a hurt that I could have helped, somebody with a hand that I could have held, and I just can't see past myself. Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little less like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. Oh, to feed the beggar on the street, love to be your hands and feet, freely give what I receive. Lord, help me be. I want to put you first above all else, love my neighbor as myself, in the moments no one sees. Lord, help me be. 1, 2, 3. A little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me, a little more I'm living everything I preach, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me.
Church, go in peace and use the gifts God has given you for the common good. Be love in the world today.
Oh, I have have days I lose the fight. Try my best, but just don't get it right. Where I talk a talk that I don't walk, miss the moments right before my eyes. Somebody with a hurt that I could have helped, somebody with a hand that I could have held, and I just can't see past myself. Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith. A little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little